Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Data Leadership Podcast. Really excited to get started on this one. I've got Howard Wild, who is a data leader specialising within data engineering. Today we're going to have a chat about a topic that interests him and has also been a running theme throughout his career, and one that I think a lot of data leaders have in their priority list, I would say, at the moment, and that's data governance and all things that sort of wrap around that. So where I think we should start, Howard, if it's okay with you, if you just want to give a bit of an intro to yourself and a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in data now for a good 20 plus years, and I started off working in mail order. So this was before the likes of Amazon and so forth. And I started off market research, and I kind of started going to the ONS and other places to get data to help forecast the trends of the markets, you know, the kind of things that people may buy, the propensity to be able to buy, whether they're looking for credit, that kind of stuff. And as time went on, it suddenly moved into being able to actually work with the marketing guys. I saw this opportunity and I said, look, you know, you're doing it this way. I've got some other data that we could put together. It's now got a name. It's called Mashup. You know, from the industry, you know, outside of our own database. You know, let's see whether we can put this together to make targeted marketing even better. So we did that, and the results came back quite positive. It was one of the better campaigns that they'd had since they'd started looking at using their own databases purely for that kind of data. So, and that was during my gap year at Bradford University. I was doing a business and management course there. So based on that, I then formed the last part of my year, focusing on all the IT kind of aspects of things, you know, enterprise information systems, as it was called then, which later became BI and other data kind of things. So I finished that, did a bit of a stint as a programmer, didn't like it, so decided that data was the thing for me. And I've been there ever since. So that was 1999. And I've kind of started off as an analyst, supporting getting data from one place to the next for decision making. That turned into, you know, a BI developer, now data engineer type person. And as time's gone on, I've just seen the opportunities to raise through the ranks or to move sideways into a management side of things, and slowly worked my way up. So I've done, like I say, engineering, lead engineer, team leader, you know, I've done some consultancy, I've headed up a BI department, and more recently, more kind of data engineering kind of stuff. So that's where I am today.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to hear how people get into data, and I think definitely people who have been in it a fair few years, it tends to be that they sort of fell into it and were gravitated sort of towards it, as opposed to nowadays when there's, you know, specialist degrees and there's a lot of different ways you can get into data. But yeah, you sort of gravitated towards BI especially. And what do you think? What do you think led you to that? What interested you about BI?
So that's something that is actually key to my heart. You know, it's the fact of being able to turn data into insight. You know, it's all very good moving data from one place to the next, you know, the ETL side, but the core thing for me is then doing all the, you know, the analytics on top of it, and being able to shape that data into something that can be used by the business. Because at the end of the day, businesses run on two key factors. You know, it's money coming in, money going out. If you can turn insight into streamlining money going out or reducing it while increasing the money coming in, then yeah, you're on a winner. being able to make data-driven decisions, as we saw on the first episode of your thing here, it's one of those things that has just grown and grown and will continue to grow. I've been in situations where, from a finance perspective, I invited myself onto a meeting at one point, and the accountants were all debating on what they should do, and they decided that to make a decision, they needed to go off, about 7 of them independently, go away for the week, collate a load of data, put it back together, bring it together, and then make a decision a week later in a meeting that was going to take about 2 hours. In the back, I'd already preempted this. I'd knocked up a very small finance cube, and during that meeting, I got an idea of what they were looking for. I brought up the facts and the figures for them about 3/4 of the way through the meeting, and I said, is this what you're looking for? Are these the answers that you need to make this decision? 15 minutes later, we left the room, a decision had already been made. That kind of saving, that kind of ability to make decisions, it's the thing that has always grabbed me.
Yeah, it's just very powerful, isn't it? Very powerful. Yeah. And that's why I've always loved recruiting within data. It's a very interesting industry, and it's only going in one direction at the moment. So no, it's great. So what I think is best now is if we move on to our topic for today, which is data governance. And I think maybe start off with why do you feel this is, one of the more important areas for data leaders to consider, especially right now?
Okay, so this is, I won't say it's a loaded question, but there are loads of answers. So, I mean, one of the first things for me is data governance is the foundation for being able to make credible data-driven decisions. If your data is of poor quality, or if people do not trust it because there are multiple versions of the truth, or people aren't comparing apples with oranges, the credibility of that data and that information, and hence insight, it gets watered down. People start to not trust it. They decide to start looking other places for that data, which may not be as credible. The data quality aspect of it, I mean, that goes without saying. Without qualitative data, the decisions that you will end up making can be quite poor. The analytics around it, the governance around the policies and procedures for actually putting data together also needs to be there, because without it, again, you may end up with poor quality data or duplicated data, which helps, or should I say, doesn't help anybody. One of the other aspects is that it helps align teams. So one of the things about the data governance is that you start to label data. You start to come and gain this master data, or this common lexology for what you call things. I've been in places where you've got 2 people sat on the same desk doing the same job, but for different market areas, and they have 2 very different definitions for what they're totaling up. So when they go to their boss looks at one set and he goes, right, okay, that's great. He looks at another set and he said, I don't understand why are you doing things differently? So it helps bring commonality and people together, and not just from the same department, from across, sales, marketing, manufacturing, transport, whatever it is. It kind of brings this common thing together and starts to make things more of an enterprise thing. And then, of course, governance is all about, how you manage data, whether it's in transit or whether it's still. And it's like we've seen with Citigroup recently. They've not had a very good track record with data governance recently, and they've been fined 400 million for it, US dollars, that is. No small amount of money there. Admittedly, there were other failings, but a lot of it was down to their data governance. The fact that somebody can pay a lot of money out of their own bank to creditors for Revlon, it's beyond imagination. The governance around that to allow that to happen, the policies and procedures were vastly lacking. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing. These are the important bits as to why data governance needs to be there.
It's yeah, and it's pretty shocking that can happen, and I don't know whether this sort of comes about when a business scales, especially when it's at a large scale. It's sometimes hard to define this, and it's sometimes hard to put in place, especially if there's been nothing in the way of data governance, and they're doing, fresh pair of eyes have come in, and they're trying to put that in place. It's obviously complex, but yeah, I know you mentioned that article to me the other day, and I gave it a read, and I think it was 900 million, I think, had been paid across, something like that. Huge amount. And I think off the back of this, they are actually having to re-architect their whole sort of platform. I think they're having to re-engineer their processes, and I think they're actually investing about 1 billion in doing so. So obviously a huge business. So it's a clear example, but it just highlights the importance of data governance, data quality, and having these type of processes in place.
Yeah, and you've hit on a good point there. So Citibank, they have grown quite organically. They've taken over a number of companies, and when you do that, you end up with a cacophony of different data policies and procedures from each of the companies that you take on. You're on different systems. You'll have different lexology for different things. So yeah, I can understand where they've got to and why they've got there. They just didn't pay enough attention, and it probably seemed like too big a pill to swallow to be able to do it properly.
I mean that's it. And when you're a data leader, you're approaching data governance. So you've come into a new business, that data governance needs to be high on your priority list. Where do you start is what I'm trying to say. Where do you start in that process from your opinion?
Okay, so the first thing is, you don't try and boil the ocean. Like Citibank, it's one of those situations where you think, this is too big. So break it down, bite size it. So what I tend to do is, when I go into these places and I'm looking at what we can do and how we can do it, the first place you have to start is always understanding the as-is model. Where are you at the moment? You can't go any further without understanding where you are. And once you've got an idea of that, then you can start to look and align the things that you can do with the business priorities, the stakeholders, the people that are going to, at the end of the day, have to put their hand in their pocket to pay for this. So, choosing the right projects or the right size of projects is always key. The next thing that is obviously then actually getting the budget for it. If it's not already signed off, if you don't have that very sympathetic CEO or COO or whoever's going to put their hand in their pocket, if they're not on board already, you're going to have to sell it, and that's one of the hardest things to get going. Asking somebody to stump up a whole rake of cash for what seems like not much of a benefit is quite hard. So it then goes back to that, aligning your message with their message. Never make it technical. As soon as you start making something technical to a business leader, they'll just switch off. You can talk to an architect all day long about how enterprise architecture should be in place for data governance, and they will eat out your hand. But you go to somebody that's actually going to have to put skin in the game on it, it then becomes a lot harder. But if you've done your homework right, you align your message, you identify the benefits as to what this is going to do. And going back to that, it's going to stop you from being fined. It's going to help revenue generation, or you're going to find some ways of streamlining the process, making people more accountable. The quality of the data is going to help with, the customers. I mean, who in this industry hasn't seen one or more ERP systems or CRM systems that has the same customer in 6+ times, you know. And if each of those 6 customers has a different point of contact, you are contacting that customer 6+ times, and it may not be the right person. I've seen customer satisfaction scores of plummet because the CRM system is atrocious. You know, we get accosted by these people trying to sell us stuff. You know, and I'm not even the right person. You know, so bringing in that governance, reducing data duplication, improving the data quality can help with that. You know, and that's something that you don't typically see. You know, there's no return on investment on that, or I should say, it's very hard to put a value on that. So it's getting those benefits out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the really tough bit, isn't it? Selling it to the key decision makers.
Yeah.
You're essentially asking for, you know, a big sum of money to sort out a problem that might happen, or although almost definitely will if there's no governance and quality and procedures in place. But it is a hard sell. And when it comes to being a data leader, that's got to now be one of the key elements to a successful data leader, is to have that ability to translate non-technical stuff to non-technical people. But it's not just that. Like you say, it's actually putting the emphasis on their language, basically talking their language, whether that be around, you know, revenue generation, customer loyalty, all these aspects that will start to put a value on investing in this type of thing. And do you think that's something that can be taught in terms of talking to these individuals and selling it, or do you feel it's something you pick up along the way?
I think it's one of those soft skills that most technical people, or not a lot of technical people, can get. You'll tend to find that you know, techies go one way or the other. They'll go tech specific and become very, very wonderful at what they do, and hardcore techie. You'll find the other one that goes off into a management style of thing, and it's their job to sell it, but they need the soft skills to be able to do that. Yeah,
definitely. So looking back on your career, are there any examples of challenges you've faced when trying to implement data governance that you could touch upon?
yeah. Oh, there's a whole rake of them. One of them is, and this was more around the implementation. So there was one organization I was working for, very regimented, if you get my meaning. And you would find that as you were understanding the landscape, so data moves from one area to the next, you know, it's enriched at this point by these people, in a certain way, and then it's moved on to a next set of people who enrich it in a different way. It comes back to another group, and so on and so on. And you find that you know, quite often, and this wasn't just with this organization, but you'll find that there are empires, and there'll be a certain amount of lawlessness. So that there will be people out there that will say, this is mine, this is my data, or this is my process, I own this area, and therefore I own this data. But as soon as it's out of their remit, or if it's not beneficial to them, it's a wasteland, lawlessness. You know, there are certain sets of data out there that has no management whatsoever, but can end up being a very critical piece of information that is used in decision making. And it's that you've got to kind of, you know, harangue people for, you know, making them accountable for it, identifying what is, you know, what is managed, what isn't, who manages it, who doesn't, and then trying to find those people who will manage it or take it off other people and give it to the people who do it best. So whenever you do a master data management program, you'll find that, you know, the customer is a prospect, he's a customer, he's a repeating customer. You know, the number of times that different departments or teams will touch that data file and enhance it or enrich it, can be phenomenal. And there will be certain types of people or certain departments that will actually take pride in making sure that that data is there, whereas another one will just give it a cursory glance and put it through. finding that right team to take the ownership can be quite important, because those are going to be the people that actually care about that data. And I've found so many times before that it is actually very hard. And I've failed numerous times trying to take data off somebody because they don't treat it with respect. But it's just the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, definitely, and again, it speaks to people skills. Essentially, it speaks to how can you build relationships within a business? How can you use those relationships within a business to be successful as a data leader and to achieve some of the goals you set out to. And I think that's very important. I suppose, is there any things you definitely avoid if you were to do it again? If you were to do to go in and try and do some of these to implement data governance, is there anything you'd avoid?
There's another tricky one. So I mean, I think the first time that I tried this, I was too techie. I surrounded myself more with the tech people, the infrastructure architects, to try and get this thing going. And I didn't really engage with the business. I didn't find those people that, were at the end of the day, the end customer, or the people that really needed the information and insight from the systems. So going back, if I could have changed that, and I have done since, you learn by your mistakes. Now, it's more of a 70-30. I'll spend most of my time with the business. I'll be looking for those people that do give a damn about the data, that do have a say about what should be going on and how it should be used. And I think one of the unsung heroes that I tend to wheedle out is the data steward. So within any team, and now that I've been talking, I realize that at one point I used to be that data steward. When I've worked at a number of places, my first role, I became a data steward because I cared about the data and I wanted to bring it together. But what you'll find is that there's always that person within a department or a team that has a particular penchant for the tech side of things, for IT, that wants to create these macros that brings data and does this and does that. And finding that person can be very, very beneficial. It's keeping everybody within the team, a team that enters the data onto the system. If they keep skipping particular fields or this, that, and the other, the data quality goes down. Having that hook into that area with the data steward can be really beneficial in terms of just saying, can you just have a word with your guys again about this? And they go away and they do it, and it's really good. So yeah, but finding those key players, spending more time with the business is the kind of things that I would suggest.
Definitely. Really important advice there. And I think just to sign off on this then, how do you keep up to date personally with the changes in data governance, in compliance, in the new methods when it comes to data quality and things like that? How do you personally try and keep up with that as a leader?
So I contribute to things like this. I do a lot of LinkedIn. I do a lot of research on my own time, talk to other particular leaders. I attend the Northern forums, data forums, and I just try and keep my hand in with all the stuff that's going on. Like I mentioned to you about the Citibank, that came up. I took note of it, and just keeping your ear to the ground, looking for the latest technologies as to how you can do these different things. Even a couple of months ago, I ended up attending the Snowflake Forum, and they highlighted all the new things that they were doing with Snowflake, the new features. And I was thinking, do you know what? If I'd have known, if this feature had been around 4 years ago, I could have done this, I could have done that. A lot easier than what we did, than the way we did it. So yeah, just keep your ear to the ground, attend as many different things as possible.
Fantastic. Well, what I'll do, Howard, if it's okay with you, I'll put your LinkedIn link onto the video. If anyone has any questions to Howard or wants to speak about anything else around data governance, then of course feel free to reach out to him. But yeah, it's been great speaking to you today, Howard. I really appreciate you being a part of it, and yeah, and until next time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.